When hunting, most undersea predators rely on razor-sharp teeth, lightning speed, or brute force. But there are also creatures that feed and defend themselves with more subtle but no less effective weapons. For many animals, survival depends on a powerful discharge of venom. The poisons of certain marine species are among the most lethal found in nature. The sting of a box jellyfish or stonefish can inflict excruciating pain and even kill a human. In an ironic twist, these potent toxins are now sources of new wonder drugs. Deadly cone snails have helped researchers discover innovative ways to treat severe pain and a host of other human ailments. For these seemingly defenseless animals, life hinges on their lethal arsenals of venom. In a coral garden, animals of every shape and description weave a living tapestry. This is the enchanting realm of the tropical reef. In this undersea city, the struggle to survive is the driving force behind the lives of all creatures. Many animals are both predators and prey, and one of the most effective tools for survival is venom. Some species use conspicuous, even flamboyant displays to advertise their toxins, while others rely on more subtle means to eat or not to be eaten. Of the many creatures which utilize venom, only a handful are deadly to humans. Of all undersea animals, sea snakes have one of the most potent toxins. Their venoms are far more powerful than those of most terrestrial snakes. Just a few drops are enough to kill a human. Many divers and swimmers have had the unnerving experience of a curious sea snake approaching or even touching them.
For humans, there's really very little danger unless the snake feels threatened. They're a wonderful animal to work with under the water because they're not threatened by us, and so we can handle them as long as you're gentle and they don't feel stressed. Then they're really a very easy animal to work with. Dr.
Glenn Burns is one of the world's foremost sea snake specialists. Over Over the past 2 decades, he has captured and studied hundreds of the animals. His research has helped to dispel many of the myths surrounding these intriguing creatures. The danger to humans from sea snakes has been greatly exaggerated. They are far less likely to bite us than virtually any venomous snake. And unlike other deadly species, they can be safely handled. The inquisitive reptiles look at divers as just another piece of reef to explore in a search for their favorite foods. We are clearly a greater threat to them than they are to us.
All right, let's take her out of the bag, measure him, and we'll check him for a tag.
Yep, no worries.
Come on, out you come. This one's actually a male. The males actually don't grow as big as the females, but this is a big male.
Right.
So what we might do is we'll pop him up here on the bench, and if I hold the body, and I'll get you to handle the rest of the body, and we'll measure him.
Yep, no worries.
And we'll get a length on him.
Yep, head.
Because sea snakes have little fear of man and are relatively easy to capture, they are often killed for their meat and skins. Motorboats and fishing trawlers also take a heavy toll. Trapped in nets, the air-breathing snakes easily drown. In a number of areas of the Indo-Pacific, sea snake numbers are declining dramatically.
You can read it off at the vent there. Oh, she's cranky.
Yeah.
I want to get a snout vent measurement, so if I hold the tape here,
Yep.
so can you just read it off on the vent?
Yeah, it's 1.25 snout vent.
Oh, she's wriggling. Okay, so that's 1.25 snout vent. Beautiful. All right. All right, now, see when she starts to twist like this, it's better to put her down because I don't want to damage her. Okay, lay her body down.
Yep.
And
Backs
let
off.
her go. Because they're actually, the vertebrae in here are really delicate.
Right.
So if I actually hold her and she starts to twist, if I hold her too hard, it'll actually dislocate the vertebrae in her neck. So it's better to lay her down, back away, let her calm down, and then start again. People who are usually bitten by snakes are handling them either on deck, the way we have been, or fishermen, trying to get them out of nets, for example.
When someone is bitten by a sea snake, the rapid use of antivenom is crucial in helping the victim survive potentially fatal symptoms. Burns milks the snakes of their poison, which is then sent back to serum labs to be developed into antivenoms.
Okay, let's see what she wants to do. Okay, so she gave most of her venom then, just in one bite. You can see it there in the bottom of the glass. And that's a lethal dose. That's enough to kill us both. If she bit me now, she's still potentially capable of delivering a lethal dose of venom, even though we've just milked her. When she bites you, you don't really know how much venom that she's pumped into you. It may be a dry bite. I was bitten once before, and it was a dry bite. I was bitten but not envenomated. And you don't know. You don't know whether you have any venom in you until you start to show symptoms. Okay, so if you can take her head, I'll just. You right there?
I'm down.
Beautiful.
Right. Yeah, I got it. You right?
Yep.
To distinguish individual snakes, Burns utilizes an electronic microchip called a pit tag. With a minor surgical procedure, he inserts the tiny device directly into the animal's body.
There it goes there. Okay.
With a database of hundreds of snakes, Burns can track their migrations along the Australian coast and help identify animals killed in fishing nets or by boats.
Very nice.
With much of sea snake behavior and biology a mystery, there still remains a lot to learn about the enigmatic reptiles.
One of the reasons that we know so little about sea snakes is the fact that they are so venomous. People tend to shy away from them. A potentially dangerous animal like that doesn't really lend itself to close observation. I've been working with sea snakes for 20 years now, and I'll continue to work with sea snakes. I still find them fascinating. There's so much we don't know about them. I mean, so far we've been able to track some individuals, but we've only been able to do it with like one species, and there are so many more species to work with. So, you know, I'll continue to work with sea snakes, absolutely. Whoa, cranky. Whoa. That's a very cranky snake. All right.
The venom of this marine animal is also one of the strongest toxins on Earth. But its deadly poison is also giving new hope to patients suffering from acute pain. Australia's Great Barrier Reef, stretching for over 1,200 miles along the country's eastern coast, the reef is the largest community of living organisms on Earth. To study one of the ocean's most poisonous animals, researchers from the University of Queensland traveled from the port city of Gladstone to remote Heron Island. Located at the extreme southern tip of the Great Barrier Reef, Heron Island is a renowned bird sanctuary. It is also a staging point and research center for scientists from around the globe. This particular mission to collect deadly cone snails and extract their lethal toxins. On a milligram per milligram basis, the venom of this tiny marine mollusk is one of the strongest poisons found in nature. Coveted for their beautiful shells, many collectors, divers, and beach walkers have discovered that the attractive snails pack a powerful punch. They've been the cause of hundreds of serious injuries and several documented deaths. Their venom is strong enough to paralyze or kill a human.
In the envenomation process, most individuals feel a sharp pain. They have a feeling of loss of control of body function. Their blood pressure can either go up or down. They have trouble moving, trouble breathing.
Get you some oxygen. We're gonna take good care of you, don't worry.
The neurotoxins of certain cone snails are so powerful that they can cause the human respiratory system to shut down. While fully conscious and aware, many victims lose the ability to breathe. or the heart simply stops beating. Dr. Paul Aylwood is a professor at the University of Queensland and a founding member of the Genome Project. Genome is a pioneering leader in the research and development of new medicines derived from the venom of toxic animals. And the venom of the cone snail is likely the world's richest treasure trove of new drugs. With over 50,000 different toxic proteins, or peptides, the cone snail family promises the most important pharmacology of any animal species. With the right dosage and combination of peptide molecules, these poisons appear to be highly effective in the treatment of a number of human ailments.
Each conotoxin impacts upon a different nerve system in humans. Some of these relate to pain, others to blood pressure, others to mood, and others to muscle control. So they're a huge source of potential drugs.
Australia is home to 100 of the world's nearly 600 species of cone snails. Heron Island, with its immense surrounding reef, is an ideal collection site.
We'll go out and straight out there. I think it's going to be another half an hour.
Yeah, I think so. It'll be half an hour to get out to there in any case, so. Okay, well, the tide's still a fair way to go.
Going to head out there?
So let's stop and have a look where we're going. Where's that pointer?
The marker.
During extremely low tides, Aylwood and his colleagues fan out across the shallow reef to search for cone snails.
Let's do it.
Oh, beautiful. Nice one, guys, over here. Capitanus lives on top of the rocks, and you can see by the growths on the shell, whereas underneath it's all nice and shiny.
No, nothing there.
And there's the rest. Good find.
Aha! Pretty.
Got something?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Yes. Beautiful, beautiful.
Lovely and shiny. Living under the rock.
Mm-hmm. Straight under that.
Kind of
sand.
striatus.
Mm-hmm.
The researchers need only gather 1 or 2 snails of any given species. Their toxins can then be analyzed, sequenced, and replicated in a lab. The collection of a small number of animals has a negligible impact on mollusk populations.
It's a Burnius or a Braeus. Good. Yeah, absolutely. It's just a young snapper. No, there's nothing there. It's certainly the unglamorous bit of can hunting.
After dark, the animals are more active as they leave their coral hideaways to feed. At 2 a.m., the crew returns to the reef to search for the nocturnal hunters.
Well, with a bit of luck, they're cruising around in the evening. In principle, it's they should all be awake and out. In practice, it's pretty hard to see them in any case. There's a little fish under there.
Cone snails prey on worms, other mollusks, and fish. And it's the species that hunt fish that are most deadly to humans. As we are also vertebrates, like fish, these toxins unfortunately target our physiology. The mollusks can smell their quarry from a considerable distance. Their mantle is drawn out and forms a siphon through which water enters, providing respiration, but also alerting them to the presence of their prey. And at night, most fish are asleep. Closing in on a goby, the slow-moving snail readies its deadly harpoon. In seconds, the fish is immobilized, and the mollusk wastes no time in ingesting the huge meal. The goby will satisfy the snail's hunger for several days. At the research station, scientists extract tiny venom glands of various cone snails. It's a laborious process and difficult work. Powerful microscopes reveal a close-up look at the snail's barbed weapons.
There, wow. Look at this, real fishing hook.
The mollusk's arsenal includes dozens of tiny harpoons.
A wee bit more defined.
The barbs are tethered to their body and packed with enough venom to paralyze or kill their prey. Cone snails are indeed one of nature's most brilliant and deadly designs. In Queensland's largest city, Venom utilizes cutting-edge technology to extract and synthesize the venoms of cone snails and other highly poisonous animals. One of Australia's deadly killers, the funnel web spider, is also a potential source of new drugs. Its poison can be milked by gently stimulating the animal. Rearing up and exposing its large fangs, the spider discharges a lethal venom. Principal scientists at Venom combine skills in genomics, chemistry, and pharmacology in the pursuit of medicines based on animal toxins. The researchers have a particular interest in cone snails. The poisons of these beautiful mollusks are becoming the holy grail of new drugs. The toxic molecules, or peptides, of cone snails work by disrupting communications between different cell groups. By blocking these transmissions, conotoxins can effectively treat a wide variety of ailments.
They've got many hundreds of different peptides, and what we do is take out one or two and isolate them, work out their activity, synthesize them chemically, and then we can test them in people. Venom's research has a very bright future, we believe, because it's got the potential to treat diseases that are presently untreatable. We can really now start to get very excited about the potential of these to treat a much wider range of disease.
Depression, epilepsy, autoimmune diseases, and acute pain are only a few of the areas in which cone snail venoms appear to hold great promise. Scientists at Venom have isolated peptides from the venom of nearly 100 species of cone snails. Remarkably, their toxins are far more potent and effective than morphine and other opiates. And best of all, they're non-addictive.
The future of this research is pretty exciting. The main reason I do this work is to discover new things. As a traditional chemist, we used to design new drugs from scratch. Every time we work with a venom, we discover a potent new molecule with potential drug use. It's fantastic.
To find many of the ocean's deadliest animals, you have to travel to some remote places. One of the most remote is Papua New Guinea. There is no better place in the world to find the sea's most venomous creatures than Papua New Guinea. Poised near the Earth's epicenter of coral reef biodiversity, the region is home to a staggering variety of poisonous animals. This nearly invisible invertebrate is the most toxic species of them all, the box jellyfish. They are responsible for more fatalities and serious injuries to humans than all other creatures in the sea combined, including sharks. Box jellyfish are a deadly presence in the tropical Pacific.
The box jellyfish is, of all the different venomous marine creatures, it is the most venomous marine creature. The poisonous part of the animal is going to be a set of tentacles. And these tentacles contain specialized cells called nematocytes. It's these nematocytes that actually cause the sting and cause the envenomation. The toxin produced by the box jellyfish is a neurotoxin. It acts on the transmission of nerve impulses from the nerve to the muscle. Victims that are stung by the jellyfish will have difficulty breathing and can go into respiratory arrest. The poison can also affect the heart and go into cardiac arrest.
Dr. Gary Ronay is an expert on highly toxic marine animals. His search for species like the cone snail and box jellyfish frequently bring him to places like Papua New Guinea.
Oh, this is a nice one. This venom is what's called a neurotoxin. It actually blocks the transmission of the nerve impulse from the nerve to the muscle. So effectively, it paralyzes the muscle. As a matter of fact, in some cases, the poison is so powerful that the person is transported to a hospital. They have to put on a breathing machine, a ventilator.
Oh, wow.
But it's an extremely powerful poison, very interesting poison too. The waters of Papua New Guinea, the Indo-Pacific area, has the greatest biodiversity of marine life in the whole world. And the greatest number of species are concentrated in very small areas. This biodiversity offers the diver a tremendous opportunity to see the most beautiful creatures in the world. Many of these are venomous and potentially dangerous, but they all play a role in the ecosystem.
Many fish in the sea utilize venom, but most do so for defensive purposes only. These harmless-looking creatures are marine catfish. They school together in a tightly packed group, appearing almost as a single animal. But they also have a hidden defense mechanism. They are highly venomous. Dorsal and pectoral spines are packed with a lethal cocktail. Believe it or not, these tiny fish have caused human fatalities. This strange animal is a demon stinger. Beauty may be in the eye of the beholder, but there are likely few who would find this creature attractive. It is still sometimes referred to appropriately as a ghoul or devilfish. Everything about it is odd. It can swim, but its preferred method of travel is walking. With foot-like appendages, it shuffles along the bottom. The demon stinger is part of a very large extended family named Scorpinidae, more commonly known as scorpionfish. Distributed worldwide in virtually all seas, scorpionfish come in a dazzling variety of shapes, sizes, and potency. Their venom-laden spines are very effective defensive tools. But to eat, scorpionfish rely mostly on camouflage and lightning-quick speed. Some species are highly territorial. There is no room on this reef for 2 male scorpionfish. After a prolonged match of nose-to-nose posturing, the 2 adversaries prime themselves for a fight. After locking on his foe, both animals rest. But after a few minutes, the jousting continues. This contest can last for hours. Not all scorpionfish are drab or ugly. Several members of this family are very striking animals. Their finery has inspired many names, such as turkey, lion, or zebrafish. Like most scorpionfish, their dorsal and pectoral fins are loaded with poison. Venom sacs at the base of their spines discharge a potent toxin at the slightest touch. Favorites in the global aquarium trade, many hobbyists have learned firsthand that this is one beautiful fish that you do not want to handle. This gruesome fellow is a stonefish, the most venomous fish in the sea.
An envenomation from a stonefish or any of its related fish, any of the scorpion fishes at all, is extremely painful. A colleague of mine was envenomated by a stonefish, so when we had to race him off for first aid and get medical attention, so I know firsthand just how much pain a person can experience from stonefish, almost to the point where you lose any rational thinking. The way a stonefish envenomates you is the physical pressure of stepping on the spines ruptures the skin, and then the pressure of your foot pushing down upon the spine compresses the venom sacs and the venom gets into you. This colleague of mine who was envenomated by a stonefish and the intense pain, I can imagine someone who didn't have the same strength of character as he did may well have wanted to end their life rather than continue experiencing the pain.
At the Australian Institute of Marine Science, Dr. Lyndon Llewellyn studies marine toxins and the animals that produce them. Australia, with a much larger population than New Guinea, bears the brunt of serious envenomations in the tropical Pacific.
If you're interested in venomous animals, Australia is a paradise. We have some of the most venomous mollusks in the world, some of the most venomous jellyfish in the world. People shouldn't get the wrong impression that getting out of bed in the morning and going for a swim is a dangerous thing to do. Envenomations and fatalities and poisonings from marine animals are rare. probably rarer than car accidents.
Many jellyfish are poisonous, but on a tiny island in the South Pacific, this species evolved to survive in fresh water and lost its venom. In the Western Pacific lies a vast region known as Micronesia. It is not a singular country or island, but rather an immense oceanic territory that contains over 2,200 islands. Collectively, they span an area greater than the landmass of the continental United States. The tiny country of Palau is located on the far western fringe of Micronesia. Like emerald jewels in a turquoise sea, its massive lagoon is sprinkled with picturesque islands. One of the most compelling underwater ecosystems here is not part of the ocean. In the thick jungle of one of Palau's rock islands exists a strange aquatic phenomenon. Seismic upheaval caused a small portion of the lagoon to become trapped in the center of the island. This eventually isolated the lake from the surrounding ocean. Jellyfish Lake is a brackish lagoon that is home to over 100,000 non-stinging jellyfish. A few species of fish and 2 types of jellyfish adapted to the decreasing salinity, evolving certain unique characteristics. Most importantly, the invertebrates lost their venom. Over the millennia, the jellyfish developed a symbiotic relationship with algae. Algae is sustained by the energy of the sun. The plants live in the body of the jellyfish and provide sustenance to their mobile hosts. The jellyfish carry the algae around the lake, following the sun's rays to maximize production of new plants. It's an unusual yet productive alliance of 2 very different species. Unlike their marine counterparts, these animals have no use for venom. They initially had no predators and didn't need to sting their food, so evolution eventually relieved them of their weapons. They're perfectly safe to touch. But another marine predator followed them into the lake. It's unclear how or when they arrived, but unlike the jellyfish, these anemones did not lose their ability to sting. Ironically, the jellyfish are now prey to the venomous anemones. To feed, and especially to avoid being eaten, most animals rely on some form of weapon or specialized behavior. Most mollusks hide behind thick shells of armor. Other animals, like this pygmy seahorse, utilize camouflage to conceal themselves. Pipefish, a close relative of seahorses, mimic sea fans or corals. Some creatures take shelter in deep burrows, while a few even bury themselves completely in the sand. A number of species also work together to fend off attackers. In this dangerous realm, many animals form surprising alliances. Certain crustaceans are protected by sea cucumbers, jellyfish, or slugs. They catch rides with their larger, mobile hosts who also stir up the bottom to reveal tasty morsels of food. In addition to meals and transportation, these shrimp have another deterrent to avoid predation. Nudibranchs are poisonous. If it weren't for their small size and inconspicuous habits, these sea slugs would be star attractions of the reef. Unlike their cousins, snails and bivalves, nudibranchs lack a protective shell. They don't need one. Any creature foolish enough to ingest a nudibranch would probably do so only once. Sea slugs are highly distasteful or even poisonous. Bright colors and markings serve notice that their flesh is extremely noxious. But they are not naturally toxic. They actually steal their weapons. Many nudibranchs are immune to the venom of stinging hydroids and anemones, their favorite foods. The venomous cells of their prey are transferred to fleshy appendages on their backs called serrata. When attacked by a predator, the stolen toxins are used to repel the attacker. This is a rare example of the use of an offensive weapon of one animal by another. Thievery and venom seem to work for these sea slugs. They have very few predators. Sea urchins utilize needle-sharp spines to dissuade predators, but their defenses pack an extra punch. Tissue surrounding their spines is highly toxic. Fire urchins are appropriately named. Contact with their spines can inflict pain worse than a third-degree burn. Damselfish, crabs, and shrimp find refuge in the stinging tentacles of anemones. Although deadly to many fish, anemones provide shelter to a select group of tenants. These vividly colored clown anemone fish make their homes in the stinging tentacles of their fish-eating host. They acquire an immunity by continually covering themselves with mucus secreted by the anemone. This in turn stimulates the anemone not to fire its stinging barbs. Curiously, anemone fish are all born as males. When the need arises, a male will change sex. If a dominant female dies, the largest male changes sex and takes her place, and the largest of the remaining males becomes its partner. There are countless ways to earn a living and protect oneself in this undersea community, and the use of venom remains one of the most effective tools for survival. Tropical reefs and mangroves where sea snakes and other venomous marine animals live are being destroyed at an alarming rate. coastal development, overfishing, global warming, and disease are all taking their toll. The collection of cone snails for the shell trade is also increasing. Millions are sold annually for as little as a few cents each. To date, there are no countries which monitor the collection and trade in ornamental shells. Other venomous animals like jellyfish and many species of scorpionfish are also declining in numbers. We can only speculate on the lost opportunities for new medicines should more species become endangered or extinct. And as most of these animals are predators, it is difficult to gauge the impact on the marine ecosystem should they continue to disappear. They may be key pillars in the undersea food chain. Sea creatures produce some of the deadliest venoms in nature. And although they do injure and occasionally kill humans, they hold enormous potential in the development of powerful new medicines.
Around the world, thousands of retired warships are rusting away, toxic nightmares filled with pollutants. What can be done with the aging relics? Cutting up and salvaging scrap metal from these ships is expensive and dangerous. Leaving them to rot, leaking fuel and harmful chemicals into the sea is a recipe for disaster. There is another option. Clean the ships really well, add some explosive charges, and sink them. Once on the ocean floor, former warships transform into vibrant artificial reefs. Marine species colonize these iron and steel structures at an astonishing pace. A Canadian team, the Artificial Reef Society of British Columbia, is attempting to sink its 8th project, the Annapolis, a 366-foot destroyer. But since their first tour of the decommissioned ship, the group has endured years of delays and regulatory hurdles. Thousands of volunteer hours have been invested in the project. Will it finally be sunk? In the Cayman Islands, the Kittiwake met a watery grave while hundreds of onlookers cheered. It's now a popular tourist attraction and a thriving man-made reef. In the Florida Keys, artificial reefs provide new marine habitat and relieve pressure on natural coral reefs. In May 2009, after more than a decade of delays and budget shortfalls, the USS Vandenberg was sunk in the waters off Key West. Sinking massive warships is not without its problems or opponents. Each project has to balance environmental concerns with ever-increasing costs and technical challenges. And sinkings don't always go as planned. The future is uncertain for these reefs of steel. all this explosive energy and chaos comes life, marine life, as sunken ships transform into artificial reefs. Within days of sinking, algae begins to grow and invertebrates colonize iron and steel. Small fish gather, and soon apex predators appear, increasing diversity until a complex marine ecosystem is formed. In 2004, members of the Artificial Reef Society of British Columbia visited Canada's Pacific Naval Base on Vancouver Island. They were invited by government officials to inspect the Annapolis, a recently retired destroyer escort. The warship was for sale, but the team wasn't looking to buy it for scrap value or even to keep it afloat. They were planning to sink it as an artificial reef.
Here we are down at the ex-HMCS Annapolis, just doing a walkthrough to sort of check on the general condition, which gives us an idea of what we've got to deal with for preparation, cleaning, equipment removal, etc. Here we are in the wardroom. This is, we use it as a lunchroom, but once it was the regal palace of the officers of the ship. Most of these ships were all built and they were male only back in the old days, and here we have female heads and wash place, so for obvious reasons they have their own little space. These would have been all the ship's offices along this side. You know, administration office, engineering office. This is engineers, paymaster's office down this way.
Wes Root's business is marine salvage, and he knows boats, especially big Navy vessels.
Actually, we'll go up the bridge first.
Wes is the project manager for the Reef Society and is overseeing the preparation, cleaning, and metal recycling on a half-dozen of these Navy ships. And on the Annapolis, Wes is looking for treasure, metals that can be removed and sold to help fund the project.
As far as the salvage value on the ship, of course, it's all recyclable metals. So any of the non-ferrous recyclable metals is where any value is. The coppers, the brasses, the stainless steels. You just don't get any better than this. Lots of brass and copper, stainless, aluminum. This is what makes it all work. Here we are in the nice, shiny stainless steel galley. The price of stainless steel is pretty high right now, so it definitely helps things. I was going to get my wife a big soup pot like that because I've got 6 kids, but she didn't see the humor in it. I look around at all the metal, and effectively this is what fuels the whole machine. When we first started doing these ships, I had a nifty old guy helping me through this all. I still remember him going down to the engine room with one of the young guys that was working with us, and he went down there and he says, "Mike," he says, "can you smell it?" And he says, "What, Joe?" He says, "Brass." He says, "It's everywhere." I haven't done so many of these ships of very similar design. Every time I get into one of these projects, I get on the ship and I go home at night and I wonder to myself, why do my legs hurt so much? And then I realize that I'm on the giant Stairmaster. There's more sets of stairs, and all day long you're going up and down stairs. If I've got a hard hat on, I'll knock the hat off 100 times during the day, but once you work with the ship long enough, you just instinctively know. It's like a cat with whiskers. You sort of move along and you can sense that it's there and just dip, and rarely do I bang my head.
Although salvage work is important to the project, Wes Root's main responsibility is preparing the ship for sinking. And that requires a zealous approach to removing pollutants, fuel, and other materials that just don't belong in the ocean.
The ship's going to have oil, especially in the machinery spaces. There's going to be oil spilt on deck plates and underneath bits and pieces. And when we finish cleaning this ship, it'll be clean to the point not only will you not see any oil, but when we flood the space, there will be no oil sheen on the water. And it takes a very small bit of oil to put a sheen on the water. To efficiently clean this ship, we probably need 6 months to do the job front to back, given all the little extra time you need for any problems that might arise. As much as it would be financially rewarding to cut this whole ship up into scrap steel, it's a fabulous end of these ships to send them as a reef. We take enough salvage off to finance the job, but this ship will be going for decades as an artificial reef, and it'll be a fabulous site for both the fish and the divers.
Hopefully the Annapolis will be given a real Viking's funeral as an artificial reef. If not, she'll have the ignoble fate of being towed to a scrapyard in the third world country and just cut into razor blades, and the pollutants left on board the ship will end up back in the marine environment.
It's a very big concern too from a pollution standpoint, how well these ships are being prepared by people who are out in these scrap yards, simply tearing things apart helter-skelter. We see that as a total disregard for the real benefit use of an artificial reef like a ship in terms of usability and tourism.
After lengthy negotiations, the Artificial Reef Society acquired the ship a few years after their initial inspection tour. But little did they know the Annapolis project would drag on for nearly a decade. The team was certainly the right one for the job. They had carefully prepared, salvaged, and sunk 6 of these ships, and even a Boeing 737 aircraft. The first naval vessel acquired by the Artificial Reef Society was the HMCS Chaudière, a destroyer escort. The ship was built in Halifax in the 1950s at the height of the Cold War. After a long and distinguished career as a peacekeeper, it was purchased from the Canadian government for the princely sum of $1, plus tax, of course. No one could have ever imagined the Chaudière would serve out her final years on the ocean floor. Such a huge ship had never been purposely sunk in Canada. It was a daunting project, and the ship sinkers had to learn as they went along.
When we first saw the Chaudière sitting at the dock in Esquimalt, I thought, this is nuts, this thing's huge. There's no way we're ever going to turn this into an artificial reef. There's so much work to do. The sinking of the Chaudière didn't exactly go according to plan. These are large ships, and we didn't have a lot of support vessels to help keep it in the right position. And when it started to sink, we had no more control over it. It actually got offline about 70 degrees, and it also sank on its port side. Narrow ships are 366 feet long, but they're only 66 feet wide. So it's easy for them to get top heavy as they start to sink and then roll over, and that's what happened with the Chaudière.
Neil's cameras mounted to the ship provided a fisheye view of the action. This is the Chaudière today. 20 years after being sunk, the ship is a magnificent artificial reef.
It's lying on its port side. On the bottom, it's a lovely wreck. It's more like a real shipwreck in that it's kind of haphazardly lying on the bottom rather than being upright, the way the more recent ships have gone down.
The Artificial Reef Society learned many hard lessons from their experiences with the Chaudière and later projects. They are now considered world leaders in this unusual field of expertise. Canadians have literally written the book on how to properly prepare, clean, and sink a ship within demanding environmental standards. Dr. Chris Harvey Clark is a biologist and professor at the University of British Columbia. He's an expert on marine life colonization of sunken ships. Today, along with veteran cinematographer and zoologist Neil McDaniel, Clark is making his first dives on 2 long-established reef projects, the wrecks of the Cape Breton and the Saskatchewan.
What do you got in there, gold bars? Yeah, sorry. Our beer cooler. Oh, good. I'm glad because it's heavy. That's a good sign.
The shipwrecks are located a few miles offshore and are only accessible by boat.
Okay.
Charter operator Kevin Breckman makes a sizable chunk of his living shuttling scuba divers back and forth to the sites.
The wrecks are a fantastic thing, specifically just for the biodiversity and for the increase in marine life. Economically, they're spectacular because it increases not only the sport of diving and the interest in the sport of diving, but the offshoot like hotels, restaurants, just basically the tourist industry. It's just a fantastic thing, and hopefully we can continue to do so.
The waters off British Columbia are generally dark and cold, but that doesn't stop most scuba divers in the province. They're a hardy bunch.
Well, the water is darn cold here and about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so we've got to wear dry suits to protect ourselves thermally.
Scuba divers here need a lot of equipment. Heavy weight belts, buoyancy compensators, thick gloves, and hoods. It can be a bit cumbersome.
The moment of transition, when we go from being land animals to water animals. So Neil, I'm really pumped about this. I mean, this wreck's been here for 15 years. It should be absolutely loaded with marine life. So looking forward to the dive.
Yeah, Chris, you're going to like this dive. It's of all the destroyer escorts that have been put down in BC, it's probably the richest in terms of marine life.
And there's one more piece of heavy gear, the camera.
Okay, Neil. Getting your workout today, Kevin?
I am.
There we go.
You got her? Okay. That is one heavy frickin' camera.
It's good. Good thing you had your Wheaties this morning, Kevin.
Totally.
The big thing about sunken wrecks is that they're really a great big sampling device. They sit proud of the bottom up in the water column where nothing was before. They're hard substrate, and a lot of animals prefer to be attached to hard surfaces, particularly a lot of the invertebrates. There's a controversy about how animals and plants arrive on these wrecks, and particularly with fish, which can swim on and swim off. One school of thought has it that these things are giant sinkholes and all the animals in the area will come and cluster and it'll actually depopulate surrounding areas. There's another school of thought that these are actually amplifiers and a few fish will come and colonize and they'll reproduce and you'll get larger and larger numbers. I'm kind of favoring the second theory. These wrecks are havens. They actually provide a place for these animals to hide from predators, a place where they can lay their eggs, ability to get away from other animals that might be competitors, and of course things settle on the wrecks that they can feed on. So they're really, I think, have an amplifying effect. First thing you see is you're coming down the line and this ghostly white appearance coming at you out of the depths, out of the murk. And of course it's Metridium. It's these giant white anemones that are everywhere, carpeting the wreck, and mostly white. There are a few other colors, but they're definitely one of the signatures of the Pacific Northwest and on these wrecks. And then of course lots of fish. And one of the signature fish we see are the rockfish family. These are these spiky looking, long-lived, quite territorial for the most part fish. And I think for me one of the most exciting moments was seeing a species I hardly ever see anymore, the yellow-eye rockfish, which is a long-lived, lives to at least 128 years. After these wrecks sink, they stabilize, the invertebrates are attached, animals are starting to reproduce, fish populations are starting to grow, and that's what we're seeing now in the Nanaimo area. They have, I think, a golden period, and the golden period where they're just loaded with marine life happens in the decades, not in probably the first decade, but the second, third, fourth decade, it becomes loaded with marine life. These wrecks are just probably coming into their golden period now, 20 years on, and we're going to see massive invertebrate life. The sponges are the thing that really strikes you. When you see a cloud sponge as big as a Chesterfield, that's an exciting thing to see. And all the animals that are then inside that and living in that, that's just a life layered on life, and that's the exciting thing about these wrecks, because a lot of them have gone into places that are just a mud sand bottom, reasonably monotonous environment, not a lot of structure, not a lot of hard substrate, and now we've put these wrecks in and all these other things become possible.
So what'd you think of that?
Beautiful. That was fun. That was a great dive and a lot of diversity and a lot of density of life on that wreck. Everything we put in the ocean is a mixed bag, and artificial reefs are probably on the plus side of that mixed bag. Are they absolutely benign? Probably not. Artificial reefs, if they're properly prepared and if they're sunk in the right place, can probably increase biodiversity and provide habitat that wasn't there before.
It's not a new concept. People think that, recreating the wheel here. It's not so. I mean, artificial reefs have been used for centuries to enhance marine life, especially fisheries and so on. Using these ships as a place for animals to grow and for divers to enjoy, I'm okay with that. I think it's a good thing. I mean, there is opposition, obviously, to these projects. A lot of these people, however, have never been on an artificial reef. They've never seen one. We have a very good track record here in BC as far as these projects go. I mean, we're one of the world leaders in doing this kind of thing. A lot of places in the world, they look to BC, to what we've done here, for their inspiration in doing these projects. You can't just take a vessel out there and, knock a few holes in it and send it to the bottom. I mean, that's not going to do. And I think nowadays there's no public appetite for that. The government's not going to let it happen.
And in many of these ships, when they're sunk, they're actually cleaner than the bottom of most of the hulls sitting in a marina. I think if it's done properly, ship reefs are a great thing for the environment.
Retired RCMP explosives expert Roy Gabriel has sunk more ships than most navies. Gabriel has overseen the demolition of a half-dozen Artificial Reef Society projects.
But we've got to get this tank out of here. It's either that or open it up and clean it out, and that takes too long.
Getting a vessel to the bottom quickly and upright is a technical challenge. It takes experience and lots of explosives.
This is a sample of the copper flex linear. It's designed and built specifically for cutting steel. It's RDX explosives on the inside with a copper sheeting around the outside.
The shape of the charge controls the massive shock wave that's produced. The explosives create an intense, narrow cone of energy that slices through an inch of steel plate in the blink of an eye.
What we have here is the face side or business side of the explosive charge. This is the portion that will face the inside of the ship, and this is where it will actually physically cut a meter square hole or a 39-inch square hole out of the side of the ship.
The explosion initially forces the steel outward. Water pressure pushes the plate back in, and the ship floods. It usually takes weeks to plan and assemble the explosives that sink a big naval vessel. A dozen or more custom-designed panels blow meter-square holes in the ship. They're carried, sometimes down several levels, to the bottom of the ship and fitted into place.
Let me get one in the other side here. Okay, that'll stay there, Bruce.
Each of the charges is built to fit precisely against curved hulls. For the flex linear explosives to work effectively, they need to be an exact distance away from the steel.
When the engine room, boiler room go off to start with, these charges would jump right off the ship because there's so much shock wave and twisting going through the ship as it fires. All of this timber basically just gets, blown into chipwood.
Sinking an enormous warship requires that the explosive charges be precisely timed, fired in pairs inside the ship's hull just below the waterline. A tiny margin of error separates an upright artificial reef from a dangerous wreck sitting on her side, or in the worst-case scenario, completely upside down. This is the former USS Spiegel Grove, an artificial reef in the Florida Keys. It's now a major scuba diving attraction, but it had a very troubled beginning. It's a good example of the potential risks and what can go horribly wrong when you sink thousands of tons of steel. After cleaning, the 510-foot, 5,400-ton ship was towed into position for final preparations. But on May 17, 2002, a day before she was supposed to sink, something went wrong. No one knows exactly why, but it began to sink prematurely. She was not only sinking, but she started to roll over and turned upside down. Air was trapped in the keel, and the ship bobbed at the surface. The Spiegel Grove was now a shipping hazard. Getting the ship to the bottom and hopefully on her side was the first priority, and it needed to be done fast. Salvage teams were brought in, new holes were cut in the hull, and enormous balloons were used to help get the ship turned over. Once on the bottom and resting on her side, Hurricane Dennis intervened. The storm was serendipity indeed. Not only did it help push the ship over, it gently placed it upright, an event no one could have even remotely imagined. The Spiegel Grove is now a great example of what can go right with an artificial reef. It's a haven for marine life. Fish and encrusting invertebrates cover the ship. The wreck is a huge success. But critics of artificial reefs question how they affect the environment, fish populations, and natural reefs. The Spiegel Grove is part of a long-term study on the impact of artificial reefs. Lad Akins is the project manager of Reef, the Reef Environmental Education Foundation.
The Spiegel Grove is in a very unique position. It's in a sand bottom area, away from the reef, but somewhat close. Let's say within a quarter mile of nearby natural reef areas. And I think the intent was to put it far enough away that even if it moved a little bit, it wouldn't damage the natural reef, but also close enough so that there could be interaction between the marine life on the natural reef system and on the wreck itself. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. We're in year 4 of a 5-year study right now, looking at the fish assemblages, not only on the Spiegel Grove, but also on the adjacent natural reef areas. And we've really seen some great stuff. Over 170 species of fish on the Spiegel Grove itself. There are a number of potential uses for these ships, one of which is placement as an artificial reef, but it has to be done properly. They have to be cleaned. There need to be studies done of what's in the area and what the potential impacts could be. And we really need to be careful about storm damage and deterioration of these structures through the years as well, and think well in advance. Not just right now, what's it going to do, but in 20 or 30 or 50 years, what's it going to be doing? So I think when done properly, a ship placed as an artificial reef can be a very good thing. That's not to say it always is, though.
In Virginia, Texas, and California, hundreds of mothballed ships are part of the U.S. Defense Reserve Fleet. Some of the vessels are in good enough shape that they can be activated for duty in national emergencies. The oldest, most decrepit hulls are generally slated for recycling, but for many of the ships, their ultimate fate remains uncertain. Some are just too toxic with pollutants to scrap, while others are simply not valuable enough to bother scrapping. Even though it wasn't the largest in the Virginia Reserve Fleet, the USS Vandenberg was chosen for a unique project in Key West, Florida.
The Vandenberg project was conceived back in, I guess, 1996. We had been put on notice as a community from the National Marine Sanctuary that they were going to allow us to put a large shipwreck down here in the sanctuary. And so we made a decision and we picked the Vandenberg out of an inventory of about 400 ships. We liked it because of all of the topside structure. We figured it would hold more fish that way. And it was listed as a low hazmat ship suitable for artificial reef. So we wanted a clean ship. It was cool looking, it was big. Those things kind of drove the decision.
Several years into her retirement, the Vandenberg looked a little worse for wear. But she was destined to join several other successful artificial reef projects in the Florida Keys.
The Vandenberg, from a historic perspective and recreational perspective, will complete the southern leg of the Florida Historic Shipwreck Trail. This one will be easily accessible for glass-bottom boats and snorkelers, as well as scuba diving and fishing. So it's something that everybody can participate in. Our reefs are struggling, as they are worldwide. And this project, we worked with the local maritime resource people and the National Marine Sanctuary to design a reef that would be attractive enough to physically move recreational pressure off of the natural reef and put it onto the artificial reef. It's designed specifically as a management tool for the sanctuary.
As Sink Day approached, curious crowds gathered at the Key West Pier. It was a big event, unlike anything the community had ever experienced. It's not often that you sink a 500-foot ship on purpose. Right up until the last minute, there was still an enormous amount of work to do.
To understand the work that's been done to bring this ship fully compliant with a very strict and hundreds of pages of long best management practices from the EPA, the Marine Sanctuary, Florida Fish and Wildlife, Florida DEP, and there's about 18 different government, local, state, and federal agencies involved. It's very difficult, if you've never been through this, to understand the absolutely breathtaking amount of work that it takes to get this kind of project done. There's machinery, hundreds of thousands of gallons of fuel, cleaning all the systems, pulling out vents and doors and a million feet of wire. We're working 12 and 14-hour days straight through to get her ready and have her properly prepared, fully compliant, ready to be deployed.
For Key West, it means we have a ship that's going to produce about $6 million worth of revenue for the Monroe economy, about $500,000 in sales taxes, and 191 new jobs in the middle of a recession, and that really works well for us down here.
It's always a bittersweet reunion for former sailors, but most servicemen agree that sinking a beloved ship and keeping it intact is preferable to it being cut up for scrap.
I joined the Vandenberg in 1964. The ship was originally built as a mobile platform, so she was a mobile radar station. You couldn't put land-based radar stations every place in the world, but you could move the ship just about any place you wanted. The people on board did the data collection, and their job in doing that was to get as precise data as possible. We used to joke and say we could track a basketball at a distance of 500 miles.
The Vandenberg was important because it contributed a lot of data on both American missiles and foreign missiles that was used throughout the Cold War in determining the balance of terror. Did we need more sophisticated missiles? Did we need bigger missiles? And by the same token, what were the Russians doing? What were they building? And how did they work? All that kind of information came from this ship. There's Russian wording above my head because this ship was a movie set for a movie called Virus, where it played the part of a Russian missile attacking ship. Okay, and it did a good job. I mean, it was a B movie, but they made money on it.
The dog would come over, put his hind.
It's a memorial plaque for a friend of ours that died a few years ago. That was a former instrumentation manager out here. Really good guy. And hopefully his ashes will end up somewhere around here after it's sunk. It's nice to see the old rust bucket again, and it's going to be very nice to see it sink out there and become something useful again. And I think turning it into a reef for fishing and for diving and things is a positive outcome.
As with all Navy ships, whether they're American, Canadian, or other nationality, military ceremonies are usually solemn affairs. Countless sailors lived and died on these once proud warriors.
We had a memorial that honored my husband, Jack Steele, for his service on the Vandenberg, and it was touching.
On a calm May morning, hundreds of observers made the trip to the sinking site. Boats were allowed to witness the historic event from a safe distance. There's a certain electricity in the air when a big ship sinks. A spectacle like this is unlike anything most people will ever see. No matter how thorough the preparation or how precisely the explosives are timed, there's always a nagging apprehension that the ship will roll over. It can be an extremely tense few minutes. The ship sank in less than 2 minutes, 1 minute 44 seconds to be exact. The demolition team did an outstanding job, but even they had no idea the Vandenberg would sink so quickly.
Awesome. It looked to me like it's supposed to look. I've seen a lot of these big ships sunk, and it really looked like everything went the way it was supposed to go.
The next day, dignitaries and participants headed out to the new dive site for a first look at the ship.
Supposed to be a lot of current running this way.
The wreck site is now one of the most visited scuba dives in the world. A tremendous success story. With the scuba diving crowd, the new artificial reef is a huge hit.
Finally, we have the Florida Keys wreck trek completed. The sinking of the Vandenberg is absolutely phenomenal. We have wrecks starting in Key Largo all the way down to Key West that are world class. There's nowhere else in the world that divers will be able to experience what they're getting in the Florida Keys. Economically, it is great for the entire Keys. The pre-bookings for the summer, even into this winter, are off the chart.
I've dove all over the world. This is one of my better dives that I've ever had in my life. I'll continue coming back here, and it's a great opportunity for everybody also in the whole world to see what a beautiful artificial reef we've dropped down here. It's the best thing we've done in a long time.
I think it's exactly what we planned it to be. I think it's the world's best wreck dive. That is fantastic. I think we have 70 feet of visibility down there today, maybe 60. Real clear water, a little bit of current, and there's just a lot to see. It's just incredible. Everywhere you look, there's some other cool part of the wreck sticks up at you. I think the Vandenberg will live up to all the promises that have been made.
One of the Caribbean's most popular tourist and scuba diving destinations are the Cayman Islands. While a handful of shipwrecks here complement natural coral reefs, divers on the main island of Grand Cayman longed for a big new shipwreck of their own. Their prayers were answered with the long-awaited arrival of the USS Kittiwake.
We picked the Kittiwake from a fleet of about 300 ships that were in mothballs. We toured a lot of the ships. This ship was a great ship because it had a great history in the Caribbean already. It served some time in the Falkland Islands, recovered the black box, the Challenger explosion. So it had a good history. It's only going to be 15 feet from the surface, so you're going to have a lot of beautiful snorkeling adventures, and then also diving adventures are going to be endless dives.
The day before the sinking, ex-sailors and tourists were allowed to visit the retired submarine rescue vessel. It had been nearly 30 years since former navigator John Gladstein set foot on the ship.
When was the last time you did that, David?
Been a while. Let's go back to the recompression chambers. All right, these are the recompression chambers. This had a hatch. There's the hatch here and there, and they could decompress this side, leaving the inside at full compression, and pass supplies in and out and whatever they needed to do, people in and out, whatever they needed to do. Making an artificial reef out of a thing like this, rather than reclaiming the steel, I don't know the science, but it seems obvious to me that it's better. This ship was always intended to serve divers, and this ship existed to serve divers. And it's great that she's going to continue to serve divers.
For project manager Nancy Easterbrook, the Kittiwake endeavor was a labor of love. It wasn't always a smooth process, but finally getting the ship to the bottom safely and upright would be a huge relief.
Tomorrow, we're finally going to sink her. I've been elated by this project, frustrated by it. I have been overjoyed and all kinds of other things, but the only thing that's ever really scared me is to get her on her spot down in the ocean, upright where she's supposed to go. But you know, we got good people doing this. All precautions have been taken, so I'm really very excited about tomorrow and cannot wait until we get her down in the bottom as the new diving attraction and snorkeling attraction for the Cayman Islands.
The sinking of the Kittiwake was a unique project. Unlike artificial reefs in Canada and Florida, the ship had to be sunk without the use of explosives. The Cayman Islands are one big marine park, and the sinking site was shallow and close to shore. The percussion of explosive charges can kill fish and other reef creatures in the vicinity of the sinking. So instead of using explosives, the ship had to be flooded manually. Strategically placed holes, both for flooding and for diver access, were cut along the side of the hull. Early on sink day, the hull of the Kittiwake was flooded. Heavy pumps filled the ship with seawater as curious onlookers started to gather for the big event. Once the surrounding sea started to overflow the newly cut holes, the ship went down very quickly. Just minutes after sinking, a few divers were allowed underwater to take a look. The ship landed almost perfectly upright, a great relief to project organizers. Not surprisingly, small fish immediately moved on board, using the superstructure as shelter. And not long behind them, big predators like this barracuda ventured onto the ship. In a short period of time, the Kittiwake would become one of the top attractions in the Cayman Islands, both for fish and for tourists. This is the HMCS Annapolis. Workers are frantically preparing the ship for sinking. Howie Robbins first toured the Annapolis in 2004, scouting the ship as a potential reef project.
When we first inspected the Annapolis back in 2004, we were thinking this was an extraordinary new opportunity simply because the Annapolis was such a different ship compared to the other ships that we had already sunk. Fundamentally, the Annapolis has about 40% more exterior surface area, and that's due to the helicopter flight deck and hangar and a few other features as well. Although it's the same length and width as our previous vessels, we believe the Annapolis offers a lot more habitat space, which we think will be beneficial for marine life.
The Annapolis project has been fraught with problems, the first of which was the global financial meltdown of 2008. Scrap salvage is the main source of revenue for projects like these, and metal prices plummeted. Even with budget shortfalls and countless delays, the Annapolis project soldiers on with the help of hundreds of dedicated volunteers. Each weekend, they head out to the ship, cutting access holes, cleaning compartments, removing debris and scrap metal, whatever it takes.
Our best estimate is we have over 1,000 volunteers over a 3.5-year period and an estimated 17,000 hours put into the project.
With just a week to go before a scheduled October 2012 sink date, the ship is still not quite ready. There's more cleaning required, oil and grease to be removed, and most of the diver access holes are not yet cut. Tons of scrap steel and other metals remain on board. There's at least 2 more months of heavy labor to be done. strict new environmental inspections may now delay the sinking well into 2013. Set to sink in a sheltered bay just a few miles from downtown Vancouver, the Annapolis project has also been plagued by protests and opposition. Many people feel that sinking a ship on purpose is akin to throwing a big tin can in the water. Garbage disposal on a grand scale.
Every time you do something out in the marine environment, there are going to be people who are for it and people who are against it. And it doesn't really matter whether you're talking about aquaculture, about sinking a shipwreck. Is the sum total of what we're doing when we sink these ships, is it good or bad? I'm not an unbiased person where this is concerned. I think from my viewpoint, it's probably a better thing. It's a substrate, it's a place for animals to attach, and if we understand the wrecks can be a haven, then other places can be as well. We have high hopes for the Annapolis. I think she's going to be well-traveled and well-visited, and also she's going into an area that's kind of mud sand bottom. Undoubtedly, she's going to become a magnet that will attract, retain, and amplify marine life in the area.
With more hard work and a bit of luck, the HMCS Annapolis will soon be resting on the seafloor. For now, like countless other warship relics, it awaits an uncertain fate. When it does sink, the Annapolis will serve its final mission as a reef of steel.
The same animals that strike terror in the hearts of swimmers generate excitement with many scuba divers. In an ironic twist, divers deliberately seek face-to-face encounters with some of the ocean's most dangerous predators, sharks. Dr. Eric Ritter is a leading authority on shark behavior and a passionate supporter of human and shark interaction. In the spring of 2002, he paid a very high price for his beliefs. A severe attack nearly cost him his leg and his life. Sharks fuel a booming ecotourism industry. From tropical seas to the cold waters of the Pacific Northwest, sharks are big business. A shark feeding frenzy. A fascinating and frightening spectacle. Dozens of predators slash and tear at their prey with razor-sharp teeth. But this exciting display is not a random act in nature's grand design. It's a carefully choreographed event staged for the benefit of scuba divers. It's a fair assumption that most people would avoid intentional contact with sharks, but many scuba divers and snorkelers line up to interact with the animals. Believe it or not, shark encounters are becoming one of the most popular attractions in the sport. Of all the sharks, one towers above the rest in our collective imaginations: the great white. Even though human fatalities have decreased, the visceral horror of being eaten alive remains. Since the dawn of time, people have been terrified of sharks. But in a deeply primitive sense, we admire them. we're transfixed by predators that can kill us. This fascination is the inspiration for the holy grail of shark dives. The Cape of Good Hope, one of the most treacherous bodies of water on Earth. Winter storms work their way north from Antarctica and pound a battered coastline. Windswept shores provide refuge for tens of thousands of South African fur seals. On land, they are clumsy and slow. Underwater, the nimble seals are eager to show off their acrobatic skills. These seas are not safe for even the most agile pinniped. This is the hunting ground of the great white. In the South African fishing village of Hansbaai, great whites fuel a burgeoning dive tourism industry. J.P. Botha and Andre Hartman operate Marine Dynamics, one of the most successful shark diving companies in the country. Both were formerly commercial fishermen, but with dwindling catches, they turned to ecotourism, specifically shark tourism. Their business plan is simple: wait for good weather, ferry visitors out to sea, and get them up close and personal with great whites.
The South African white shark diving business around Gansbaai started in the early 90s. In the beginning, there were only 3 operators. It grew to the 8 operators we have at the moment. Initially, there was a sort of an emotional outcry, and people were really concerned that the number of shark attacks would increase due to the commercial activity of attracting sharks. That fortunately has proved to be a false fear. This activity does not necessarily lead to more shark attack. And of course, the statistics have also been with us, so that the number of shark attacks have actually not increased. The local economy has benefited quite substantially by the shark tourism. The industry employs about 40 to 50 people, and these people spend their money in the local businesses. So there's a lot of spin-offs emanating from the shark business.
To attract the sharks, Andre Hartman first chums the water with a pungent combination of blood and fish remains. The scent of cow shark liver is a particular favorite of great whites. Coaxing them to the stern, Andre demonstrates an unusual phenomenon. Pushing aside the snout of a shark one day, he discovered that the animal became almost catatonic. It rolled its eyelids down, rose out of the water, opened its mouth, and snapped its jaws. The strange behavior appears to be related to highly specialized sensory organs in their nose and mouth, Touching them momentarily short-circuits their senses. Most customers view sharks from the safe confines of a boat or from a protective cage, but a few brave souls pay extra for the privilege of venturing into the water without the security of steel bars. At the surface, Andre Hartman acts as a safety diver and occasionally shows off. Do not try this at home. On the seafloor, a cautious Hartman scents the water with fish blood. The diver's expectations are exceeded. A 15-foot white shark appears like a ghostly apparition.
We were underwater for about 40 minutes, and of course the action all happens near the end of the dive. We were starting to get cold. Water temperature there was about 52, 53 degrees. And you're looking through the small viewfinder and trying to keep it framed and focused, and the shark comes out of the gloom and simply just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and fills the frame on this high-definition camera. It's pretty awe-inspiring.
That shark swam right around us a couple times, looked at us, examined us, then made a pass across the bottom and right at the camera. Sharks don't have fingers and hands to test things with, so what they have to do is bite something. Unfortunately, because of their enormous size and tremendous strength, when they bite something, even though they're just sampling it and you really couldn't consider that a shark attack, it doesn't make much difference to the person that's been sampled. It still hurts.
The shark showed recent signs of mating activity. Deep scars along her side indicated a bite from a very large male. We can only speculate on the size of the animal that inflicted these wounds.
It seems like the more time I spend in the water with sharks, the more I realize that when you look into their eyes as they swim by you, and eye contact is very important with wildlife, there's someone in there. It's not just a stupid animal swimming by. Sharks are not maniacal or dangerous man-eating machines that are swimming around looking for humans to eat. They're really not.
In the Bahamas, over 100 sharks show up for a feeding. But how do you get out of the way of a frenzied mob? At the northernmost tip of the Bahamas, 100 miles east of the Florida coast, lies Walker's Key. The island is a renowned sport fishing destination and hosts thousands of visitors each year. Seizing on the availability of leftover fish parts, shark diving pioneer Gary Atkinson found a novel means of recycling normally discarded carcasses.
We're a premier fishing destination. Subsequently, as the fish would come into our fish cleaning room, we save those carcasses. We recycle those fish heads and carcasses back into the environment. One day my staff came up to me and said, Gary, when we go down to dump the carcasses at the end of the runway, the sharks hear the trucks coming and they gather. Well, I took a look at this and was astounded by it, and I thought, well, it'd be a natural progression then to relocate it out to the reef, and subsequently that's what we did. We started saving the carcasses, packing them, created the chum sickle. Basically, with the chum sickle, it's carcass feeding, which is very natural for this predator. So we wanted to present it to him in as natural a form as possible that he would understand. And in no way then would it also connect it to us as the diver, that we were going to be just viewed as another predator down there on the dive who showed up for the same reason they did. And that's why we can do the dive as safely as we do it, and why we've never had a single incident of agonistic display in 11 years. Probably 35,000 people have done this experience, including children as young as 4 years old, having animals within just a few feet of them.
At the dive site, the captain revs the boat's engines. The noise is a cue for the sharks that a feeding is about to begin.
Hold it right there.
As the frozen block of bait sinks, only a few sharks appear to be interested. Other fish are quick to take advantage of the free meal. Once thought to be set off by a single drop of blood, the infamous feeding frenzy may instead be incited by several different stimuli. The vibrations and head shaking of the first fish to feed, the scent trail, and the visual commotion all combine to excite the sharks. As the bait ball wears down, it eventually falls to the bottom. The sharks then fight for the remaining morsels of food. A handful of well-publicized attacks in 2001 spawned the Summer of the Shark. Overnight, shark bites and sightings became front-page news. Lost in the hype was the fact that there were far fewer attacks that year than the previous year. Worldwide, only 4 deaths were attributed to sharks in 2001. The Summer of the Shark dramatically changed public perception, taking it several steps backward to the old Jaws mentality of the 70s. The past quarter century since that landmark film has not been kind to sharks. Virtually all species have seen population declines of between 50 and 90%. The strain on their numbers comes primarily from overfishing. Federal regulations restrict shark fishing in U.S. waters, but the animals are targeted relentlessly in much of the world. Their cartilage is still considered a cancer treatment, and Asian demand for shark fin soup supports a wasteful finning industry. One of the main goals of diving operators such as Gary Atkinson at Walker's Cay is to increase awareness of the shark's plight through interaction with the animals in their natural habitat.
I think it's so vitally important that people learn as much as they can about an animal that is really misunderstood. In doing this experience and trying to educate people and hopefully stop the slaughter of these sharks, I feel that what we do is significant. The reason we do what we do is it's a myth exploder. People suddenly realize that, gee whiz, I'm down here with 100 animals and I'm safe and they could care less that I'm here. And they walk away with a whole different, rich experience than they ever thought they'd get when they first arrived here. That's the seed you're planting out there, because they're going to tell other people. Sharks have a bad rap as it is anyway, and I feel like our job here is to let people know that they're not the bad guy people have made them out to be.
If sharks are not the bad guys, why would they attack and nearly kill one of their staunchest supporters? Dr. Eric Ritter is a leading authority on shark behavior and a forensic investigator of shark attacks. Ritter has been instrumental in helping to change the popular perception of sharks as terrors of the sea to a vital species which deserves protection. Over the past 2 decades, Eric has introduced hundreds of students, photographers, and biologists to sharks. With a keen passion for the animals and their plight, he is one of few researchers who dares to freely swim with dangerous sharks. Ritter works exclusively outside the protection of a cage.
What I'm studying is the body language of sharks. I'm interested in how sharks express their intentions when they approach humans. Shark-human interaction is a very new field, but it's most likely the very field we need to understand these animals. We cannot just observe them by sitting on boats, sitting in front of aquariums. We have to interact with them. My main theory is that sharks are as predictable as dogs, parrots, cats, animals that we are comfortable with, animals that we're used to. We're not used to be with sharks. We have to just give them the chance to let them interact with us.
In a unique experiment at Walker's Key, Gary Atkinson and Dr. Ritter attract a handful of large sharks to shallow water. One of Eric's more controversial theories is that dangerous animals like bull and lemon sharks are not inclined to attack humans, even when enticed with bait. He believes attacks are caused by curiosity or mistaken identity and should be referred to more appropriately as shark accidents. More than 80% of attack victims survive, mainly because sharks realize their mistake and don't return for a second bite. Ritter simulates common attack scenarios, such as those on swimmers in shallow water and those on spearfishermen in deeper seas. Throughout his experiments, fish carcasses are thrown into the surf very near to where he stands or swims.
The most often seen accident scenario we have is through exploratory behavior, meaning the animal sees us, not us as a human being, but us as an object. Several factors come together, for example, sound, smell, motion of the object. Sharks, per se, are very curious animals. They have a very high level of hesitance. But if their curiosity takes over, at the end they may grab an object just to get a final idea of what the object could be, because nothing they sense is conclusive. So that's why in very rare cases they still grab the object.
In the spring of 2002, after nearly 2 decades and over 1,000 dives with dangerous sharks, Eric's luck finally ran out. He was severely bitten on the leg by a bull shark. A journalist accompanying Eric nervously paced and stirred up debris, reducing visibility. Quickly, the situation turned deadly. A large female bull shark was cornered between the two and lashed out at Eric.
What led to this bite that I had with the bull shark was one of a general situation we've done hundreds and hundreds of times. person next to me did not stand still as I told him to. He walked back and forth. And so by walking back and forth, he stirred up a lot of sand. And so we lowered the visibility. So it was us who created the situation, not the animals. The second I got bitten, I lifted my leg right away because I had to get out of her mouth. And the problem is, if you have a 400-pound animal attached to you, there's nearly nothing you can do. I mean, you always hear, well, hit an animal, do this, that doesn't work. She let go, I looked at my leg, and I realized, first of all, it's not much left, and second of all, I knew I'm going to die within the next 2 or 3 hours because I've seen many of these wounds, and I knew how they're going to end if they do not get proper treatment.
Eric was fortunate. A small plane and its pilot were on the island at the time of the accident. Within 30 minutes of the bite, he was on his way to West Palm Beach, where a team of doctors was waiting. He nearly died due to an enormous loss of blood. Once stabilized, it appeared that he would lose his leg, but skilled surgeons miraculously managed to save it. Months of rehabilitation and a determined will spurred an amazing recovery. Additional reconstructive surgeries and skin grafts helped to restore use of his leg.
The first time I jumped back in the water was about 4 months after my bite. The wound healed so far that I could be in the water 15, 20 minutes. So the first opportunity I had, I jumped right back in at the very spot where I got bitten. I want that everybody sees these animals the way I see them. I want them to see the animal through my eyes. I see it even more clear what we have to do. We have to destroy the myth, the bad rap of these animals, and portray them the way they really are. They're fascinating, incredibly intelligent, curious. So I'm back in the water. I interact with sharks more than ever. So I'd say I do this for the rest of my life.
What is the fastest growing and most popular attraction for scuba diving tourists? Another Bahamian island is the epicenter of the shark diving industry. At New Providence, half a dozen scuba operations rely on sharks as a main attraction for diving tourists.
As for the sharks, what we don't want you guys doing is swimming with your hands, okay? These sharks are attracted to movement more than the blood in the water.
Unlike the bait ball style of feeding at Walker's Key, sharks here are fed by hand or with a steel pole. Shark wranglers utilize a chainmail suit which helps prevent injury, but a crushing bite can still hurt. The difficult part initially is to keep the ravenous animals away from the bait. Like pigs at the trough, they jostle for position. After using a pole, the wrangler moves towards the divers and feeds by hand. For the customers, this close-up action is a thrilling introduction to sharks.
It was pretty comfortable down there until the sharks got real close to you. I mean, I got pretty nervous. I've always thought they were pretty aggressive, but being down there today while they were feeding them and everything, they looked like gentle giants down there.
This dive is really, really good. Never been so close to sharks.
Other divers have seen them in the blue in the distance, but never so close up.
It's almost like he was roughhousing dogs. Whenever a couple of sharks would come up to him, and he would just push their snoot away or whatnot, and he'd grab a hold of them and roughhouse them or pet them, so it was pretty neat.
The first thing this morning, we never would have known that we were going to be shark diving today, that's for sure. We just happened to run across it, and it sounded like a cool thing to do, so we said, let's go shark diving. It was just a fantastic experience.
From an economic standpoint, shark feeding I'm very much in favor of. Some people don't approve of shark feeding. They feel that we've changed the behavior of sharks. Yes, to a certain degree we have. Taken this area, we've probably changed the behavior of about 100 sharks, slightly. But they're still in their own environment. They generate a lot of income for the Bahamas, and those same sharks generate revenue year in, year out. Shark feeding is definitely becoming more popular, and it definitely does contribute towards the conservation of sharks. These people who would have otherwise viewed them as dangerous man-eaters and not cared about them, once they've been on a feed, they've seen them feeding, they're seeing they're not these vicious creatures, they're far more inclined to support conservation issues.
Most shark encounters occur in the warm tropics. But what animals lurk in the cold, deep sea? Shark diving is not confined to the tropics or to shallow temperate waters. In the dark, frigid realm of the deep sea lives a mysterious giant, the six-gill shark. Ancient hunters, unchanged since dinosaurs roamed the earth, they inhabit great depths. These living fossils can attain a length of over 20 feet. There are only a handful of places where six-gill sharks are frequently encountered in shallow water. Washington State's Puget Sound and the Pacific coast of Canada. One of the best places to photograph and study the sharks at scuba diving depths is British Columbia's Hornby Island. Rob Zielinski and Amanda Heath operate a busy scuba diving business on Hornby Island, and six-gills are their #1 attraction. Despite the cold seas and sometimes challenging diving conditions, the animals generate enormous interest.
The main reason that people come to Hornby is to see the six-gill sharks. They're a real draw here in the summer. We cater to about 500 diving tourists in the course of May to September. And all of those people come with the intent of seeing the six-gills if they're lucky enough to do so. Hornby Island is a unique location in that it's one of the few places in the world where we can observe six-gills in water shallow enough to scuba dive in. In many cases, they're found at depths of several thousand feet, which is unreachable by people under most circumstances. Sport diver tourists come here, as well as scientists, film crews, still photographers, etc., who are interested in an opportunity to see the six-gill in its natural habitat.
Researcher Dr. Robert Dunbrack of Newfoundland's Memorial University searches for clues to the behavior and biology of these enigmatic sharks. Each summer aboard his research vessel, the Stalvik, Dumbrak travels to tiny Flora Islet off the coast of Hornby Island. Six-gills and their unusual habits pose many intriguing questions, but simply finding the elusive animals is the first of many challenges.
It was much more difficult than we originally thought it might be to work on the six-gills. We thought we could just do a bit of diving and the six-gills would be there and we could make behavioral observations in a way that we might do on, let's say, polar bears or some sort of terrestrial mammal. The study site that we settled on was on Flora Islets off Hornby Island. We spent a few days there on our research vessel looking for sharks and didn't see anything, and we were prepared then to leave and go and find another site. But on our last dive, we saw 8 sharks in one dive, so that as soon as we saw that, we decided this was a place to do the work. The unanswered question about these sharks, of course, is why are they coming into shallow water? They're deep water sharks. They're known virtually throughout all the oceans of the world, but only from deep waters. Well, a natural thing to conclude is that they're coming in to feed, because this is what animals have to do most of the time, is look for food, but we have no evidence that they are feeding. It's not known whether they feed at night and maybe come onto the reef during the day for some other reason.
Dumbrak quickly realized that direct observation of the animals was very difficult. Depth and time constraints, cold water and currents, and finally locating the sharks on the deep reef made research a daunting task. To aid in his studies, he devised 2 ingenious yet simple methods of observing and recording six-gills and their behavior.
We have built a time-lapse video system that allows us to put a video camera down. It takes pictures, 4 frames every 10 seconds or so. On a single film, we're able to get 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the time of year. It's just a daylight system. We also have set up a stereo system which consists of 2 video cameras that are cabled directly to the surface. They look over the same area. They're facing down off the reef wall, and so the sharks will swim underneath these 2 cameras. And based on the geometry of the cameras, we can actually get measurements, direct measurements of the size of the sharks as they pass underneath, and also their swimming speed, which we can use for metabolic studies.
That's right. The moment of truth. It's dry.
Early in the summer field season, Dumbrak made a curious discovery. Harbor seals and stellar sea lions, prey for other large sharks, were interacting with the six-gills. Video monitors and time-lapse cameras revealed the startling behavior.
Now what was that being? Oh, that's interesting. That's a seal right there, chasing him. I don't believe this. Wow, it's amazing. Seals directly underneath the shark, sort of coming underneath him, is sort of buzzing him.
Six-gill sharks are not known to feed on seals or sea lions. It appears that the playful mammals are simply curious about their large visitors from the deep. In recent years, fossil remains of prehistoric relatives of six-gill sharks have been discovered on Hornby Island. Over 25 species of mostly deep-water sharks from the Cretaceous period have been identified from fossilized remains. Fossil shark teeth are very common, but they're usually attributed to shallow water species. These puzzling clues appear to suggest that six-gills and many other deep-water sharks frequently ventured into shallow seas.
Within a stone's throw of the site where we were watching these sharks swim around, there are fossils of the sharks that have been there over 65 million years ago. And looking at the teeth of those species, they're virtually indistinguishable from the teeth of the fish that we were looking at. Within the last 100 million years or so, they probably haven't changed much at all. It's very
With the collapse of many traditional commercial fish stocks, six-gills were briefly considered a viable new fishery. But with little knowledge of their population, reproductive and growth rates, this ill-conceived plan was put on hold.
Trying to run a fishery on a species like the six-gill is very problematic. It's a large fish. It's certainly long-lived and has very low rates of reproduction, so the sustainable exploitation rates would be very low. So a large shark that might be 60 to 100 years old might fetch just a few dollars, whereas we do know for a fact that this species probably brings in several $1 million a year just to the dive tourism industry as a living resource. The more people that interact with the sharks in a passive manner as divers and get a positive experience, the better it is really going to be for the shark.
Despite many unanswered questions and an uncertain future, six-gill sharks inspired tremendous respect from both scientists and scuba divers.
Rob and I consider ourselves to be very lucky in that we're members of a very small select group that have seen a live six-gill swimming in its natural habitat. It's something that many people can never dream of doing. It's an exciting thing to see this shark moving in its environment.
It's really hard to describe the feelings that you have when you first encounter them. To put it in terrestrial terms, it would be similar to going through a hike on the west coast and running into the elephants and the giant sloths that used to live there 12,000 years ago. It seems like a throwback to times when animals were bigger and more plentiful on these reefs. And it's a very stirring experience. There's virtually nothing that we know about this species, so anything that we get is going to be useful, and there's so much to know. It's something that could keep us going for many, many, many years.
Many of us don't scuba dive or even snorkel. What better way to satiate our curiosity than to view sharks through 6 inches of glass? Shark encounters are not the exclusive domain of scuba divers and marine biologists. The animals are also top attractions in zoos and aquariums. The public fascination with sharks is deeply rooted. People of all ages are mesmerized by the sleek and powerful fish. At the Atlantis Resort on Paradise Island in the Bahamas, sharks are a crowd favorite. You can even rocket down a water slide or river raft through the middle of their Mayan shark tank.
I think the reason why people are so fascinated by sharks is because a lot of people don't know about sharks. They have a lot of misconceptions about sharks. They think sharks are these big, scary animals that as soon as you get into the water, they're going to attack you. Economically, live sharks are much more valuable than dead sharks because they bring guests here. They want to see sharks, and it also adds an educational value because it's much easier to teach somebody about sharks and how valuable they are if they can actually see something that's living. I think people appreciate that much more than they would seeing a specimen or just a photograph in a book.
rash of shark attacks in Florida and Hawaii led state authorities there to ban the practice of baiting sharks. But instead of decreasing attacks, the bans have proven to be ineffective. The same number of people were bitten in the past few years as there were before the bans were implemented. Although shark diving does attract and perhaps alter the behavior of a few animals, feedings usually take place in deeper water, a long way from beaches and swimmers. Dr. Eric Ritter and others believe that shark baiting and chumming is a potential factor in attacks, but not because of scuba divers.
I would say about 80 to 90% are caused by sport fishing. What they create is a very hazardous situation around themselves by chumming the water, by hooking fish. Sharks pick it up. You have people in the water frolicking. Until we find a way to reduce some of the sport fishing habits, we will always have the same number of shark bites on a yearly basis here in Florida. If the ban really would have done what they predicted, meaning no accidents anymore, then at least it would be safer, but we still have the same accident rate each year.
I definitely feel that organized shark feeding, done properly, is safe. And it definitely raises awareness of this animal's plight and raises awareness of the animal's fragility, and it's a myth destroyer. As an animal that's been on this planet for close to 500 million years, that has been brought to the verge of extinction in the past 20 years. And he's being wiped out at such a tremendous rate. You remove the shark, you suddenly turn our oceans in a very, very short period of time into a septic system. Our oceans are in trouble. If we don't protect this animal, then all of us lose. Everybody. And what a sad thing. I want my kids to see what I saw today.
Despite their strength and predatory skill, sharks are remarkably fragile creatures. Conservation efforts have traditionally had little support or enforcement. They aren't as cute and cuddly as dolphins or as majestic as whales. After all, on rare occasions, they do kill people. We are slowly coming to realize that sharks are integral members of the ocean food chain. We're learning that while a dead shark may bring a few dollars to a fisherman one time, a live shark may generate thousands of dollars in annual tourist revenue. And best of all, the shark is allowed to live. Perhaps scuba divers and other eco-tourists can ultimately play a key role in preserving these vital species. Sharks are big business in adrenaline ecotourism, and some thrill seekers deliberately pursue close encounters with deadly sharks. Divers are pushing the boundaries of human and shark interaction, baiting with fish carcasses and blood, inciting feeding frenzies, all in a quest to get ever closer to creatures that can kill them.
That was f***ing hairy! Jesus Christ!
After an injury ended his career, professional bull rider Eli Martinez founded Shark Diver magazine, and he also organizes excursions for shark enthusiasts. And there's no shark dive more exciting or dangerous than Tiger Beach in the northern Bahamas.
Nautilus Explorer, Nautilus Explorer.
Captain Mike Lever's most popular trips feature encounters with great white sharks. At Mexico's Guadalupe Island, he's trying something completely different, introducing young children to sharks. In 2008, the first tourist on a commercial shark diving expedition was killed by a shark. The death ignited a firestorm of controversy. Shark advocates and shark attack victims Eric Ritter and Chuck Anderson have grave reservations about how far we are willing to go for a thrill. It's reasonable to assume most people would want to avoid sharks, but some scuba divers and snorkelers pay big bucks to get up close and personal with the animals. The bigger and more dangerous the shark, the better. Shark encounters are becoming one of the most popular attractions in the sport, with or without the protection of a cage. We've gone from being very, very afraid of sharks to having an almost cavalier attitude about them. But have we taken shark diving a bit too far? Many scuba divers are asked if they're afraid of sharks. They're frightening creatures to most of us, but for some people, getting close to dangerous sharks is exactly what they're hoping for. Simply swimming in the ocean means we've become part of the food chain. You can say the same about a walk in the woods, but at least we're in our element, above the water. For shark divers, there is something primal and enticing about entering an alien world where sea monsters lurk. Perhaps the best place to scuba dive with one of the most dangerous sharks is in the Atlantic Ocean in a remote corner of the Bahamas. In the tropics, there isn't a bigger or badder predator than the tiger shark. In terms of the number of attacks on humans and fatalities, they are second only to great whites. The largest one ever caught was 24 feet long. It's a contender with the great white as the largest predatory fish in the sea. At West Palm Beach, Florida, Shark Diver magazine publisher Eli Martinez has organized a one-week expedition to the northern Bahamas to scuba dive with big sharks. A former rodeo cowboy, Martinez suffered a career-ending injury shortly after turning professional. He then took his passion for dangerous animals to a new extreme.
I spent 6 years riding bulls and doing the rodeo circuit. And it was on one of my stops when I got my pro permit and I started going to pro events that I cracked my hip. And I was out for 2 months, so I decided to get my diving certification and went on a dive trip, and I'm dropping down and I saw a shark, and that was it. Basically hung up my spurs, literally, and I started chasing sharks after that.
Okay, you're clear.
After motoring overnight from the Florida coast and clearing Bahamian immigration, the liveaboard diving vessel Dolphin Dream headed north to remote Tiger Beach. Captain Wayne Smith is credited with discovering Tiger Beach and first introducing scuba divers to tiger sharks.
Well, I've been coming out here 27 years now, and we came to this area and we anchored up because it was a shallow, protected area. Sometimes at night we'd have some dead carcasses and we'd throw them in the water and they'd come up and start feeding on them. And after a while, there's got to be such high demand for people wanting to see tiger sharks that we started running these trips.
Everybody, welcome to Tiger Beach. As you can see, we already have a bunch of lemon sharks swimming around. We prefer everybody dive in twos so that somebody can watch your back while you're in the water. Once you jump in, just keep your hands here. Don't start waving them around or splashing. Other than that, we already got sharks here. The pool is open.
Gotta get in there. This is what we nutty people do. This is what it's for.
Yeah, my jailhouse tat. I didn't actually get it in jail.
Any last words, Neil?
Look after my wife and children.
When I started wearing the hat was to save my hair, and it kind of became my trademark. So I never dive without it. The only time I don't is when it's really, really cold and I gotta wear a hoodie, but I'm still trying to figure out how I can make that work.
Dozens of lemon sharks are a constant presence at Tiger Beach. They're not generally considered aggressive, but they are implicated in over 20 non-fatal attacks on humans. Many sharks, including lemons, can be dangerous given the right conditions. A beautiful animal with piercing cat-like eyes, they are part of the Requiem family, which includes other well-known species such as tiger and blue sharks. The animal everyone is here to see is the tiger shark. Although not endangered, they are very rarely encountered while scuba diving. It takes some time for the tiger sharks to venture in from the fringing coral reef. They seem at first to be relatively uninterested in the divers or the lemon sharks. But on the first dive of the first day, tiger sharks eventually came closer and made their presence known in a big way.
Holy crap. Man, I've done some scary my day, but that one takes the cake. You didn't want to know what was happening behind you. Did they follow me up? I was rolling on one, it came right behind you. Tiger? Yeah, it took a little chew on your tank. There's nothing I could do about it. First dive, first day of the trip, I get bumped by 2 or 3 tiger sharks right in the lens, coming right at me. You were turned away from me, and this big tiger shark came swinging around, and he was coming toward me, and I'm kind of backing off. Then he swung in behind you, and I guess for some reason he decided your tank was something he'd like to investigate, so he went up and he just kind of mouthed it a little bit, and you're oblivious to the whole thing, of course. Those are big, rather impressive looking sharks, I gotta say that.
He really didn't bump anybody else, you know, he just came after your housing and you know, the tiger shark was just looking around for that food. He really couldn't find it. Probably saw the housing, was looking for potentially a meal or something and bumped it. But after that, he found what he was looking for and went after that.
To attract and keep the big sharks close, you have to use bait. A lot of bait. Most divers rarely see sharks. The animals don't make a habit of venturing close to humans with scuba tanks. Breathing compressed air is a noisy affair, and our relatively large size usually scares them away. To the sharks here, however, we're just another big predator down there for the same reason they are, for the food.
We get our fish from the fish market. It's stuff they were going to throw away. We feed that to the sharks, so it's a win-win for everybody. We recycle what they were going to normally throw away in the trash bin.
Go through about 250, 300 pounds of bait per day. You get a variety of bait. A lot of what we get is what the fish houses have left over, heads and backbones after they sell to the restaurants and the public. And then we also get some bait from some of the local fishing boats that get in these bonitas, which are real oily and bloody. And they're not a food fish. Nobody eats them as foods. They make excellent bait.
We constantly have to adapt the way we're feeding them because they're clever little devils. One of the ways we do that is with the wrangling. We tend to get them excited there at the surface. We get the lemons thrashing around because they're so eager to get the bait. And that thrashing around is what's bringing the tigers in these days.
If you want big sharks, you use big bait. We're prepping a grouper head, and what we're going to do is we're going to wrangle in the sharks. We're going to hang this out the back and try to attract the tigers to the boat. We use big heads like this because if we use smaller pieces of fish, well, the sharks will kind of take it away real quick. They got a real thick bone in their heads, so we can last with this one piece of bait, and it'll keep us there for a while. The lemons have kind of dominated this place, but they're definitely smaller in the pecking order. When the tigers come in and they want to feed, you know, there's nothing's going to stop them. The lemons will definitely give them away, especially when a big 12, 14-foot tiger comes in. You know, the lemons will leave and get out of there. The big boss here has got to be the tiger shark, absolutely. You could see here that if a tiger shark can get his lower jaw on the bottom of this crate, I mean, he'll just snap it in half, and that's what he did here. One of the things that we're noticing is that these sharks have a learned behavior, at least the tiger sharks, where we're taking our crates down there and we're hanging them, and the tigers have learned to chew through the ropes that we have these crates hanging from so that they can grab these crates and swim off with them, and at their leisure figure a way to get inside to the bait that we have hanging. And yeah, it's definitely a learned behavior. A couple of local Bahamians coming off one of the small islands out there spearfishing. I don't think he knows this is tiger shark infested waters and these guys are out there spearfishing. What do you say about that? That's extreme. That's as gnarly as it gets. Jeez. I love my job.
Another day at the office.
Oh, yeah.
Beats riding bulls, huh?
Are you kidding me? I live for this.
Eli Martinez has found a unique niche in the scuba diving world. His magazine, Shark Diver, appeals to both armchair shark enthusiasts and to those looking for a slightly more hands-on approach.
After the magazine started, the reader trips kind of evolved people start asking us, where do we go diving? Maybe they can meet up with us, or when's our next adventure? I organized our first shark trip, and it worked really well, and we had a blast. Out there in the real world, you know, you tell someone you're a shark diver, and everybody thinks you're crazy. Here, all these crazy people can get together, and no one thinks you're crazy anymore.
Martinez frequently dives with aggressive sharks and has many hair-raising video clips from his expeditions. Mako sharks are particularly fast and frightening and have very sharp teeth.
Well, here you can see the bite marks. This is actually after my last Mako shark dive. Makos are one of the few sharks that don't bump divers with their mouth closed. They actually go at divers mouth open. You can see the gouges from sharks as they really bite into the glass.
As the week progressed, the action at Tiger Beach ramped up, way up. Aggressive baiting and chumming were perhaps a bit too successful. A handful of tiger sharks became increasingly more bold. Eli had to eventually use his camera as a defensive tool to protect some of the divers. Sharks don't have hands or fingers, so they sometimes ram or nudge objects out of curiosity. And in worst-case scenarios, they may take an exploratory bite.
This is what it's all about. This is what you hope for, you know?
That was f***ing hairy. Jesus Christ.
I may have drifted into the other divers that were there, but I turned around and I'm looking straight at the face of a tiger shark, and he wasn't a small one either.
Those sharks came in, they came in hard, and it was intense. It got hairy there for a little while.
I think Eli was trying to come in to protect me because I'm filming one and this other one comes in. It got extremely hairy.
That's what you really want. You know, everybody came back, nobody got hurt, and everybody's got a big smile on their face.
Reviewing his tape after the last dive at Tiger Beach, Eli's video camera revealed an encounter that could have seriously gone wrong. This is one sequence destined for the highlight reel.
There we go. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. And again. And again. Gnarly, man. Talk about pucker factor. That is what shark diving's all about. That's what extreme shark diving's all about.
That was an outstanding dive. Absolutely outstanding. Tigers, 4 tigers, nipping at the tanks, biting the cage, the food cage. Outstanding. That's what it's all about. That's why we came out here. So, huge adrenaline rush. Huge.
Shark divers are a very small but growing community in the scuba diving world. They are a passionate group, and many are staunch advocates for shark conservation. But are they crazy? And do they take their hobby a bit too far?
It's exciting to get in and watch a shark in its natural habitat. And I did a lot of reef diving in that, and it kind of got boring after a while, and kind of wanted to start getting to the big stuff and get a little excitement back into it.
It's partly an adrenaline rush, but it goes a lot farther than that. It's hard to describe until you've actually dove with one or swam with one. They're just such beautiful animals. They're so graceful and powerful.
You know, the more you know about them, the less you fear them. And diving with tiger sharks is great.
I have done skydiving, I have done some mountain climbing, I do mountain biking, but nothing compares to it. Nothing compares to shark diving and that intense adrenaline rush you get when you first see a big shark in the water, much less 10 or 15.
I've been diving for a lot of years in a lot of different places, and I've experienced a lot of different kinds of sharks. But tiger sharks are right up there in the pucker factor. I mean, the first big one you see, it's like, whoa.
Shark divers have a need for a little adrenaline rush, and you can kind of see it during these shark dives. If it's a real mellow shark dive, they're not real excited. But boy, when the sharks get excited, the people get excited.
could take someone that's never been in the water with a shark before, that has a positive experience in the water, they're going to come out as shark advocates, and they're going to be fighting for these animals, and they're going to talk about them in a different light. And that's extremely important because, you know, the world still looks at sharks as the only good shark is a dead shark. But at the end of my days, you know, I would love to look back in my life and say, you know what, I saved a bunch of sharks. I did my part, and some sharks are still swimming out in the ocean.
The number one species on every shark diver's list is the great white. And there's no better place on Earth to find them than Mexico's Guadalupe Island. There's no doubt sharks have an image problem. Razor-sharp teeth, the icy stare, bloody feeding frenzies. It's no wonder they've earned such a woeful reputation. And after all, they do occasionally kill people. No species has worse public relations issues than great whites. And no sharks are more popular with shark divers. About 250 miles west of Mexico's Baja Peninsula is the remote volcanic island of Guadalupe. From the port city of Ensenada, it's a journey of nearly 24 hours on the open ocean to reach Guadalupe. Approaching the intimidating coastline of the island, the first order of business is to prepare the shark cages.
Keep lots of tension on that line, okay? This is the one that's like a jigsaw puzzle. Here we go. That's it. Just rotate it around a little bit more, please. About 1,000 pounds of cage that we're lifting here. In open ocean with a wee bit of a swell going. My goodness. Just beautiful here. We put the cages in at night as soon as we get here. We like to get everything all organized and in the water just in case there's any kind of problems. It's nice to get everything tied up and to get the chum slick started and make sure that the white sharks know that we're here and we're ready for business at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Guadalupe is an arid and desolate outpost in the open Pacific. Towering cliffs and rugged mountains rise over 4,000 feet from sea level. 19th century whalers brought goats to Guadalupe as a source of fresh meat. The animals multiplied as intended and eventually destroyed most of the island's flora and fauna. Today, some of the few original inhabitants that remain are fur seals, sea lions, and elephant seals. And life here must be harsh. This is the realm of the great white. In the late 1990s, long-range fishing boats targeting tuna near Guadalupe began reporting that great whites were attacking their catches. Word spread like a chum slick.
Come on, here he comes. Oh, beautiful. Oh! The industry started here in 2000 when a boat called the Horizon showed up, and they had heard stories about sport fishing boats not being able to bring their fish in because the white sharks were taking all the tuna. More white sharks than anyone had seen anywhere. So we came down here on a whim. I wanted to see white sharks off the back of the boat. But we got down here, I jumped in the water, I saw these enormous, beautiful sharks. I couldn't believe how fantastic they were. It was just an amazing experience. And at that point, I knew that I wanted to keep on doing this. It was just no question in my mind. And we ramped up from 2 trips that first year to 9 to 10 trips a year.
Like the sharks at Tiger Beach, great whites at Guadalupe need to be coaxed with bait. And nothing piques their interest like tuna.
Shark baiting 101. You make it smelly, you make it bloody, you make it oily, you get all this good yummy stuff. You mix it up with your fingers and scrunch it up to get lots of blood. You make sure that you use animals that are endemic to the islands, mackerel and tuna. And we start at chum slick. We do it in a very non-invasive way, but we make it as smelly and yucky as we possibly can.
One way to make sure that your chum is nice and fresh. Take a little bit of chum just like this, and we'll see what the mackerel in the water do. Oh, look at that. Seagulls, mackerel, and a feeding frenzy. That is fresh tuna. Ready to go. Okay.
It's one thing to see a great white on television or from the safe confines of a boat. It's another experience entirely to see the animals in their natural element. There simply isn't a single creature on Earth that we're more afraid of.
I just couldn't believe how big they are and how beautiful they are. I mean, they're not at all ferocious looking. They look like they're smiling at you until they open their mouth.
Captain Mike Lever has 2 young children with a keen interest in sharks, and he's now trying something completely different, introducing kids to white sharks. The inaugural children's trip at Guadalupe included 3 kids from Mexico and Mike and Marianne Lever's own children, Charlie and Emily.
What's your name?
Ernesto.
I know it's heavy, but once you get in the water, you won't really feel it. It's going to help you sink a little. How does that feel?
Otro más. A ver.
And then you put your feet there.
Now you want to sit down there. How many sharks do you think you're going to see?
Supply. It's salty.
It's what?
Salty. Yes,
oh,
it's
it's salty. It is a little bit salty.
Where to go? All the way down. Go. You're a grouper, man.
It didn't take long for the children to get the hang of breathing from a regulator. And once they started spotting sharks, the biggest challenge was dragging the kids out of the water.
Shark coming in! Left to right!
I don't recall what I was doing at 6 years old, but it wasn't diving with white sharks. I think it was like riding my tricycle around the street or something like that.
Well done! That was great! Charlie, it's someone else's turn now, okay? I know Charlie did not want to come up. Every time a shark would come by, Charlie would be the first guy to go, oh, there's a shark right over there. He just did a fantastic job. I am so proud of him. I think he's just had an experience that he's never, ever going to forget.
I don't think any of them have had any trepidation at all. It's been fantastic. They've been in the cages, they've seen the sharks, they've tried to help out on the boat, they want to throw the bait, they want to do everything. I mean, that's, you know, if they go and tell 10 kids and 10 more kids, it can't be any better than that.
I saw 4.
Were you getting cold at all?
Nope.
Not at all?
Nope.
I was freezing. I wanted to come out. She didn't want to come out. I gotta go to the bathroom. And she won't come out. And I kept saying up. She's like, no. Up? No.
Muy bien, mija. Pues vámonos para afuera. We brought some kids out here. We're just wrapping the trip, and it succeeded beyond my wildest expectation. Every kid, every one of them, got in the cages, ended up spending hours and hours in the cages. We had to drag these shivering little 5- and 6-year-olds out of the water after an hour or two because they didn't want to come up. They just loved watching the sharks going by. And I can't wait to find out what happens when they get home and they start telling their friends.
Dr. Mauricio Hoyos is fascinated with great whites. There's no permanent research facilities on the island, so he teams up with tour boats as a ship's naturalist. He's particularly excited to be working on this inaugural children's trip.
When I was a kid, I remember that we went to the United States and my father gave me $20 and he told me, okay, this is all the money that I'm going to give you. You have to buy a lot of toys or whatever you want. And there was this small shark and it was $20. I bought it because I really wanted it. And my father was really upset because he told me, hey, that's all your money. You have to, you can buy a lot of different toys. No, I want that toy and I still have it. Because since I was a little kid, I loved sharks. When I saw the first shark, it was like the dream of my life came true. It was amazing. It was a huge female, maybe 4 meters long. And since then, I have been working here on this island every autumn.
To gain a better understanding of the sharks' local movements and their long-distance migrations, Mauricio utilizes high-tech tools such as satellite tags and acoustic transmitters. These devices reveal startling data about how deep the sharks travel in search of prey. He's observed that smaller great whites at Guadalupe eat mainly tuna, rays, and other sharks, while the older and larger white sharks eat seals and sea lions. It would be extremely hazardous to acquire DNA samples or to implant transmitting devices in open water. Free swimming with great whites would be a challenge and a bit risky.
Okay, Jorge, shark, bring it. Put it right here. Okay, excellent.
Outfitted with an acoustic or satellite tag, the sharks reveal their depths, migratory movements and locations, and even water temperatures. At Guadalupe, Mauricio uses acoustic technology to track local sharks. The white sharks at Guadalupe spend more than half of the year away from the island in open water between California and Hawaii. But what they're doing way out there remains a mystery. A few great whites have been satellite tracked to a remote region in the middle of the Pacific dubbed the Great White Cafe. It's thought that thousands of the sharks congregate each year at the mysterious spot. Whether they're mating, chasing tuna, or even giving birth, no one is sure. For such a remarkably well-known creature, we actually know very little about them. But Mauricio Hoyos is determined to find out more.
Well, the shark is not here. Maybe we can go a little bit to the north. Okay?
With the luxury of well-appointed tour boats and their state-of-the-art shark cages, Mauricio can also observe the sharks underwater. Photo ID is another tool in the young researcher's arsenal. Each shark has unique markings, scars, and patterns. With a bit of luck, Hoyos will have many more seasons at Guadalupe to answer some of the questions surrounding these intriguing animals. Guadalupe is a protected biosphere of Mexico, but with minimal funding or monitoring of the waters surrounding the island, the sharks are under constant threat from poachers. A set of mature white shark fins can fetch upwards of $25,000, and an intact jaw is an extremely valuable prize. It's an uphill battle convincing impoverished fishermen or foreign fishing fleets that white sharks here are more valuable alive than dead.
I love these animals, I really do. These white sharks are amazing. In the last 3 days, I've had my 5-year-old son and my 7-year-old daughter in the water with them, and it was just a thrill. And I can only hope that the sharks are still going to be here for them and for their kids and their kids' kids. Nothing could have given me a greater thrill than to have spent an hour and a half in the water with Charlie this morning, having him point out the white sharks to me. I'm very, very fearful that we're seeing the end of these, and that even 5 years from now or 10 years from now, there won't be any sharks left.
If you don't relish an open ocean encounter with a big shark, you can now scuba dive or snorkel with them in Atlanta's Georgia Aquarium. One of the best places to snorkel or scuba dive with sharks is, surprisingly, the Georgia Aquarium. It's the #1 tourist attraction in Atlanta, and their 8 million gallon pool is now open. Divers and snorkelers can experience a fisheye view of their immense Ocean Voyager exhibit, home to some very interesting sharks.
The purpose of aquariums across the country, around the world, really is to inspire people to connect with nature. We want to take it to the next level. When you come to Georgia Aquarium, you're guaranteed to see whale sharks and hammerheads and zebra sharks. It's one thing to look through a window, through glass to the animals. It's another thing to be able to get in the water, to be in their environment, to understand what it's like to be an animal in the ocean. If we can get people in there, they become conservationists. They care more.
In the summer of 2008, the Georgia Aquarium opened its main exhibit to scuba divers and snorkelers. The first groups to sign up provided a behind-the-scenes look at their experience.
Well, the first order of business is we're going to vote somebody off this island, okay? And I have immunity, so you guys have to look at each other and decide who you're going to vote off.
A thorough briefing covers safety issues for both the divers and the animals. Species identification, site orientation, and a short video are all part of the experience.
The tunnel and all the windows are made of acrylic material. Are you ready to go diving? Yes, sir! All right.
State-of-the-art scuba gear is prepared for the divers, but there's still one more briefing.
I'm going to run through a few things real quick just to give you a general idea of what's going on in our exhibit today. Also to give you a few guidelines for your safety and for the safety of our animals.
It is a rare treat indeed to scuba dive in an aquarium. Only a handful of facilities around the world allow the general public such intimate access to their exhibits.
Just pretty excited about it. I just hope they fed the sharks.
Many of the participants in the first few days of the program were celebrating birthdays or were signed up by friends or relatives as a gift. Others viewed it simply as a once-in-a-lifetime experience not to be missed.
Okay.
I love you. That's great. Yes. Good birthday present. You know, it's disconcerting to see your daughter at the bottom of a really large tank of water with a lot of fish. That looked kind of scary.
Although there are many unusual sharks in the Ocean Voyager exhibit, none are as immense or impressive as the whale shark. And there's not just one, there's 4, each the size of a small bus.
It was unbelievable. You know, you dive in the ocean and you have all this beautiful wildlife around you, but it's dispersed. It's kind of a condensed version of all the dives I think I've done before.
It's just an incredible experience to have that much wildlife all confined around you at one time. It's just exhilarating as heck.
That was unbelievable. It was not like anything I've ever done before. I've done a lot of diving, but this is the bomb here.
Scuba divers aren't the only people allowed to swim in the Ocean Voyager exhibit. Each day, a group of snorkelers goes through much of the same routine. But instead of descending to the bottom of the tank, they stay at the surface.
Check that off the bucket list. Swam with dolphins, now with whale sharks. That's good. Perfect. Gotta squeeze them in. I'm 69 already.
In an aquarium, they're all well fed. There's no threat, there's no worry. They look at you, they ignore you. It's a great feeling, especially for a cameraman who doesn't have to worry about getting nipped in the open ocean. This is a great place. This is where I'm doing all my filming from now on.
Even though most shark dives are relatively safe, 2 prominent shark advocates think we may be taking things a bit too far. And they both survived brutal shark attacks.
Good to see you.
Dr. Eric Ritter has helped to dramatically change the popular perception of sharks from bloodthirsty killers to vital animals that need our protection. A leading authority on shark behavior, Ritter has spent thousands of hours in the water with sharks. He also devotes much of his time to forensic investigation of attacks, or as he prefers to call them, shark accidents. And Eric has intimate knowledge of the subject. After thousands of interactions with dangerous sharks, his luck finally ran out. In 2002, while filming a television special, he nearly died after a large bull shark bit his leg. Although he certainly pushed his luck many times, Ritter has serious reservations about how far some shark divers are now willing to go for a thrill.
When we go back to the early days of shark diving, you know, we were feeding the reef sharks and everybody was pretty much happy. But in the last few years, these adrenaline junkies, they want more, bigger and faster. And you know, now everybody seems to want to dive with tiger sharks, white sharks, big bull sharks, but it's not a safe scenario. In my opinion, it has gone way too far. It's not a question about if it ever happens, it's a question of when does it happen. And who will be blamed? The sharks.
Back home in Florida, one of Eric's new endeavors is the Shark Accident Victims Network. There's a growing need for psychological counseling of bite victims. And today, Ritter's traveling to neighboring Alabama to meet a potential mentor and fellow shark attack victim, Chuck Anderson.
Hey, Chuck. Hey, how you doing?
How you doing? Nice to meet you, finally.
Same here, finally, huh?
Doing okay?
Yeah, how about yourself?
Doing well.
A champion triathlete, Chuck Anderson was swim training for a national competition when a brutal encounter with a bull shark forever changed his life.
It was 6:38 a.m. in the morning, and I took about 2 more strokes in the water, and about that time, boom, it hit me from the bottom. And I started looking around, treading water, and I put my face down in the water, and when I did, it was coming up from the bottom at me. And I just instinctively threw my hands out to push off of him, and when I did, he took all 4 fingers off my right hand, and all that was left was my thumb. Just like a surgeon's scalpel, it just cut them off clean. There was no pain at that stage of the game, so the fin actually was coming through the water at me. But as soon as he got past me, he was attached to my arm, and he immediately took me to the bottom. It was about 15 feet of water, and he went into that feeding frenzy where he was just gnashing from side to side and dragging me across the bottom and on the sand. All of a sudden, my feet started dragging the sand, and I wiggled out from underneath him, and when I did, I pulled real hard, and my arm just stripped off in his mouth, and I fell backwards into about thigh-high water and ran immediately to the beach, and knew that I was a very fortunate man when I got there. I had a big smile on my face, and the lady asked me what I was laughing at, and I said, Karen, I ought to be dead. I'm lucky.
A handful of high-profile shark attacks in 2008 created the usual media frenzy. But the death of the first tourist who actually paid for the privilege of scuba diving with sharks created a firestorm of controversy. Have we finally taken things too far?
To go to the extreme of trying to challenge the sharks, trying to bait the sharks to come around people and to pay money to do this, it's just not natural. I mean, if you're not educated in exactly what you're doing and you're a novice at it, then you're taking a risk. I'm not in favor of it. Each to his own. If somebody wants to get into it, then be aware of what the consequences could be, because I promise you, when a shark gets a hold of you, it's not a good experience.
This was the first fatality in our sport, and it's just something, you know, all of us hope never happens again. I think it made all of us more aware of what could happen. Accidents will change any industry. It makes, you know, us as shark operators more careful with our clients, with our friends, with the people we take in the water. I don't think shark diving has been taken too far. In fact, I don't even think we've scratched the surface yet. There's still a lot of things left to do in the water with these animals. Still a lot of things left to learn, to see. I'm just tickled and excited to be part of that and to be part of helping to push the sport to the next level.
If personal experience leads to empathy and better understanding, there's no question that diving with sharks is a good thing. And even with more scuba divers encountering more sharks, the frequency of attacks has not increased. Whether shark divers are crazy adrenaline junkies, enlightened conservationists, or both, there's no denying their passion for these threatened animals. Many people still share the notion that the only good shark is a dead one. The problem today is that there are far too many dead sharks, and the remaining population is struggling to survive. And if sharks are to survive, we must all become advocates on their behalf.